Welcome to Peaceful Nightfall. Tonight's story is here to help you slow down, relax your mind, and gently let go of the day. Get comfortable, take a deep breath, and allow yourself to rest. Tonight's story is Warm Bread Aroma. The darkness outside seemed to seep into the diner's worn linoleum floor as the sun struggled to rise over the desert horizon. The coffee pot brewed its morning batch with a gentle gurgle, filling the air with the sweet scent of freshly ground beans. The waitress, her hair tied back in a neat bun, moved with slow deliberation, pouring steaming cups into chipped mugs. Her hands, worn smooth by years of hard work, moved with a quiet confidence as she worked her way through the emptying tables. The waitress's eyes, brightened by a hint of morning sunlight filtering through the diner's grimy windows, scanned the now empty tables before focusing on the coffee pot's gentle simmer. With a slow, deliberate motion, she reached out and turned off the burner, the hissing subsiding into a soft quiet. As she turned to face the kitchen door, the scent of warm bread wafted out, mingling with the coffee aroma, filling the air with the comforting promise of a new day. The waitress's hands moved with precision as she expertly spread a thin layer of butter onto the warm bread, the golden light of dawn casting a soft glow on her calm face. She worked her way around the table, arranging the fresh pastries into neat rows, her breathing slow and steady as she savored the morning's peaceful atmosphere. Outside, the desert sunrise gradually brightened, its warmth slowly seeping into the diner's worn walls, mingling with the scent of freshly baked bread to create a sense of cozy contentment. As she finished arranging the pastries, the waitress paused, her eyes drifting out the window too, where the horizon met the sky in a perfect line, the morning light casting long shadows across the dusty roadside. The waitress's gaze lingered on the desert landscape as she slowly turned back to the kitchen, her hands moving with deliberate slowness as she reached for the glass jars filled with yesterday's leftovers. She carried them out into the dining area, her footsteps quiet on the worn linoleum floor, and began rearranging the contents of each jar onto a tray, the soft clinking of utensils against metal punctuating the morning's peaceful silence. As she worked, the scent of warm bread and freshly brewed coffee mingled with the hint of yesterday's dinner, filling the air with the comforting aroma of routine. Outside, the desert sun continued its slow ascent, casting long shadows across the dusty roadside as the waitress carried the tray back into the kitchen, her eyes drifting lazily towards the window where the morning light danced across the horizon, illuminating the vast expanse of sand and rock that stretched out to the distant mountains. Her hands moved in a slow, deliberate rhythm as she carried the tray back into the kitchen, her eyes lingering on the desert landscape outside. The warm light spilled across the worn linoleum floor, casting a gentle glow on the appliances and utensils that lined the countertops. As she reached for a stack of clean plates, the soft clinking of the dishes against each other filled the air, punctuating the peaceful atmosphere like the quiet ticking of a clock. She began to carefully arrange the plates on the tray, her movements slow and deliberate as she worked her way through the morning's routine tasks. Outside, the desert sunrise continued its gradual brightening, casting long shadows across the dusty roadside and illuminating the worn signs that dotted the landscape. The waitress's gaze drifted lazily towards the window, where the morning light danced across the horizon, mingling with the scent of warm bread and freshly brewed coffee to create a sense of cozy contentment that filled her heart and soul. The tray was almost full now, each plate carefully arranged on its own little ceramic island. The waitress's hands moved in slow motion as she reached for a small jug of cream, her eyes still drifting lazily towards the window, where the desert landscape stretched out like an endless canvas of sand and rock. She poured a small dollop of cream onto the tray, the soft gurgle of the liquid filling the air alongside the quiet ticking of the clock in the kitchen's corner. As she worked, the scent of fresh bread wafted through the air once more, mingling with the aroma of coffee to create a warm and inviting atmosphere that seemed to seep into her very bones. The waitress's hands moved on, slow, and deliberate. As she reached for a small carton of eggs, the soft rustle of the container's plastic wrapping punctuating the morning's peaceful silence like a gentle heartbeat. The carton of eggs was placed alongside the plate of toast on the tray, the gentle clinking of the glass against the ceramic punctuating the quiet morning atmosphere. The waitress's hands moved on to the small refrigerator in the corner of the kitchen, its door opening with a soft whoosh as she retrieved a container of fresh milk. She poured a small amount into a tiny jug beside the cream, the soft gurgle of the liquid filling the air alongside the ticking of the clock and the distant hum of the highway outside. As she worked, her gaze drifted lazily towards the window once more, where the desert sunrise continued its gradual brightening, casting long shadows across the dusty roadside and illuminating the worn signs that dotted the landscape. The waitress's hands moved in slow motion as she reached for a small box of sugar on the counter, the soft rattle of the packaging punctuating the morning's peaceful silence like the quiet ticking of a clock. The sugar was poured into the tiny jug beside the cream and milk, the soft hiss of the liquid filling the air alongside the gentle creaking of the old wooden chairs in the corner of the kitchen. The waitress's hands moved on, slow and deliberate, as she reached for a small canister of ground coffee beans on the counter, its lid opening with a soft click as she scooped out a small amount into the morning's waiting pot. The rich aroma of freshly ground coffee wafted through the air, mingling with the scents of warm bread and fresh milk to create a cozy and inviting atmosphere that seemed to seep into her very bones. As she worked, the desert sunrise continued its gradual brightening outside, casting long shadows across the dusty roadside and illuminating the worn signs that dotted the landscape. The waitress's hands moved in slow motion as she reached for a small metal spoon on the counter, its soft clinking against the ceramic of the pot punctuating the morning's peaceful silence like the quiet ticking of a clock. The metal spoon was set aside, its gentle clinking silenced as the waitress's hands moved to the small wooden counter beside the stove. A soft scrape echoed through the kitchen as she unfolded a worn paper towel and began to wipe down the surface, her movements slow and deliberate as she cleared away any crumbs or spills from the previous morning's service. The scent of fresh coffee and warm bread continued to fill the air, mingling with the gentle hum of the highway outside and the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. As she worked, the desert sunrise continued its gradual brightening, casting long shadows across the dusty roadside and illuminating the worn signs that dotted the landscape. The waitress's hands moved in slow motion as she reached for a small wooden spoon rest, its soft rattling against the ceramic of the pot punctuating the morning's peaceful silence like the quiet ticking of a clock. The warmth of the stove radiated outwards, a gentle heat that seeped into the waitress's skin as she moved the paper towel in slow arcs across the wooden counter. Soft scrape of the fabric against the wood punctuating the morning's quiet calm. Her hands continued their deliberate movements, wiping away any remaining crumbs or spills from the previous day's service. The scent of fresh bread and coffee mingling with the earthy aroma of the desert soil to create a cozy atmosphere that seemed to wrap itself around her like a warm blanket. As she worked, the sound of the highway outside grew louder, a distant hum that blended seamlessly into the morning's peaceful silence, its gentle rumble punctuated by the occasional passing car and the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. The waitress's hands moved in slow motion as she reached for the wooden spoon rest once more, her fingers tracing the smooth curves of the wood with a quiet reverence, the soft clinking of the metal against ceramic pot, a gentle punctuation to the morning's calm, like the quiet ticking of a clock. The waitress's hands continued their slow dance across the wooden counter, the worn paper towel absorbing the last remnants of crumbs and spills from the previous day. As she worked, the desert sunrise reached its peak, casting a warm glow over the roadside town. The air was heavy with the scent of mesquite and creosote, mingling with the fresh bread and coffee to create a rich aroma that filled her senses. Her fingers moved in slow motion as she folded the paper towel, the soft rustle of the fabric against itself punctuating the morning's quiet calm. As the waitress finished, wiping down the counter, she reached for a worn ceramic mug, its gentle curves fitting comfortably into her palm, as she carried it to the small storeroom behind the diner. The air inside was stale and musty, heavy with the scent of old coffee beans and stale bread, but the waitress's hands moved undeterred through the dimly lit space, searching for the bag of fresh ground coffee that sat atop a stack of worn cardboard boxes. Her fingers trailed across the rough surface of the bags as she searched, the soft rustle of the paper against itself punctuating the morning's quiet calm. The waitress's hands closed around the bag of fresh ground coffee, her fingers tracing the seams of the paper as she lifted it from its perch atop the stack of boxes. She carried it back out into the bright desert morning, the warm light spilling through the small storeroom like a golden river, illuminating the worn wooden shelves and the dusty corners where the diner's secrets were kept. As she walked, the scent of fresh coffee mingled with the earthy aroma of the desert soil, blending seamlessly with the rich fragrance of the mesquite and creosote to create an intoxicating perfume that filled her senses. Her hands moved in slow motion as she reached for the old percolator on the counter, its worn ceramic exterior fitting comfortably into her palm. As she began the ritual of brewing the morning's first pot of coffee, the waitress's fingers wrapped around the percolator's warm handle, her grip gentle and deliberate as she lifted it to the counter's worn surface. The soft clinking of the metal against ceramic punctuated the morning's quiet calm, a soothing melody that blended with the scent of fresh coffee wafting up from the brewing pot. Her hands moved in slow motion as she poured the steaming liquid into a chipped enamel cup, the golden light of dawn casting a warm glow over the diner's worn formica tables and the vinyl booth's cracked leather seats. The waitress carried the cup to the kitchen door, her footsteps quiet on the linoleum floor as she paused for a moment to survey the morning's stillness, the desert air heavy with the scent of creosote and mesquite, mingling with the promise of new beginnings. As the waitress stepped out into the bright morning light, the warm air enveloped her like a gentle hug, carrying the sweet scent of blooming ocotillo on its breath. She breathed deeply, her chest rising and falling in slow motion as she sipped the steaming coffee from the chipped cup, feeling the warmth spread through her fingers and up her arm to her tired eyes. The dusty street stretched out before her like an empty canvas, waiting for the brushstrokes of life to bring it to vibrant color. As she stood there, cradling the cup in her hands, the sound of the town waking up reached her ears. The distant rumble of a truck engine, the chirping of birds taking flight from their desert perches, and the creaking of old wooden signs as they flexed in the morning breeze. The waitress's gaze wandered to the diner's neon sign, its letters glowing softly like a beacon, welcoming an in the new day. With a gentle smile, she began her slow walk back into the diner, her footsteps echoing off the walls as she returned to the familiar rhythms of the morning routine. The waitress's hands moved with practiced ease as she poured the steaming coffee into a row of chipped ceramic cups, the sounds of the diner coming alive around her, the hiss of the percolator, the clinking of utensils against plates, and the soft murmur of conversation among the early risers. She carried the tray to the first table, her footsteps quiet on the worn linoleum floor as she began her slow descent into the morning's rhythm. The scent of fresh coffee and baked goods mingling with the promise of new beginnings. The waitress's eyes met those of a lone traveler, sitting in the corner booth by the window. He was dressed in worn denim and a faded flannel shirt, his rugged features softened by the gentle morning light. As she poured his coffee, her gaze lingered on the map spread out before him, creased and folded into 1,000 tiny pleats, its surface a topography of roads and highways, mountains and highways, valleys leading who knew where. The waitress's hands moved with quiet purpose as she set the cup in front of him, the steam rising like a misty veil to shroud the secrets hidden on that worn paper. The traveler's eyes never left the map as he took his first sip of coffee, the warmth spreading through his fingers and up his arm, just as it had done for her by the roadside earlier that morning. His gaze roamed the creased landscape, searching for a route to take him further into the unknown, while outside the town's residents began their daily routines, the mailman making his rounds, the baker arranging his freshly baked pastries in the shop window, and the farmer backing out of his driveway in his rusty old truck. The waitress watched them all with quiet contentment, her eyes drifting from one scene to the next as she refilled the sugar dispenser and wiped down the counter with a warm cloth. As she finished wiping down the counter, her gaze wandered back to the traveler's map, now slightly unfolded to reveal a winding road disappearing into a range of distant mountains. The waitress's thoughts meandered with the route, tracing its path through valleys and forests, the sun rising higher in the sky to cast long shadows across the desert landscape. She poured more sugar into a customer's cup, her hands moving on autopilot as she continued to ponder the map, her mind weaving a narrative of dusty towns and forgotten landmarks where the traveler might stop to rest his weary head or refuel for the journey ahead. The diner's doors swung open with a soft creak, admitting a warm breeze scented with creosote and promise, carrying with it the whispers of the town's secrets and stories, waiting to be discovered by those who wandered in off the desert highways. The waitress's hands paused above the coffee pot as she let her gaze linger on the map, the creases deepening as if the very fabric of the paper was unfolding a tale of its own. The diner's patrons began to stir, their morning routines, interrupted only by the occasional creak of a chair or rustle of newspaper pages. Outside, the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a golden glow across the desert landscape, where a lone tumbleweed drifted lazily down the main street, its spindly arms outstretched like a supplicant seeking shelter from the increasing heat. The waitress's thoughts remained entranced by the map, her eyes tracing the route as it wound its way up a mountain pass, the peaks rising higher and higher until they vanished into a veil of misty cloud, where the secrets hidden on that worn paper might just be waiting to be uncovered by the traveler, if only he followed the road and let his journey unfold. As the waitress's hands resumed their steady rhythm, pouring steaming coffee into a waiting cup, her gaze remained fixed on the map, her mind still tracing the route as it curled around a bend in the road, where the landscape gave way to a sea of Joshua trees, their spiky silhouettes like sentinels guarding ancient secrets. The diner's patrons stirred once more, this time rousing themselves for the day ahead, but the waitress remained lost in thought, her eyes following the route as it led into a narrow canyon, where the walls rose up on either side, casting deep shadows that seemed to hold the whispers of the town within their ancient stones. The waitress's hands paused above the coffee pot once more, her gaze lingering on the map as the diner's patrons began to disperse, their morning routines now interrupted only by the soft hum of the kitchen appliances and the occasional creak of a chair. Outside, the sun continued its steady climb, casting long shadows across the desert landscape where the tumbleweed had paused in its drift, its spindly arms outstretched like a supplicant seeking shelter from the increasing heat. As she poured steaming coffee into a waiting cup, her eyes remained fixed on the map, tracing the route as it wound its way up a mountain pass, the peaks rising higher and higher until they vanished into a veil of misty cloud, where secrets hidden on that worn paper might just be waiting to be uncovered by the traveler, if only he followed the road and only he followed the road. Let his journey unfold. The waitress's hands moved with deliberate slowness as she wiped down the counter, her gaze still lingering on the map, her mind tracing the route as it curled around a bend in the road, where the Joshua trees grew taller and closer together, their spiky silhouettes like sentinels guarding ancient secrets. The morning light crept across the diner's vinyl booths, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch out like tentacles, as if trying to reach out and wrap themselves around the waitress's steady hands, which paused above a dirty plate, her eyes following the route as it led into a narrow canyon, where the walls rose up on either side, casting deep shadows that seemed to hold the whispers of the town within their ancient stones. The waitress's hands continued their gentle motion, wiping down the counter with a soft cloth as she followed the route with her eyes, tracing the winding road as it climbed higher into the mountains, where the air grew cooler and the shadows deeper. Outside, the sun reached its peak in the sky, casting a warm glow over the diner's parking lot, where a lone truck waited, its tires worn smooth by miles of desert highway. The waitress's gaze lingered on the map, her mind slipping into the routine of her daily tasks as she poured sugar into a container, the sweet crystals piling up with deliberate slowness, the morning light dancing across the countertop like tiny particles of dust suspended in air. The waitress's hands paused above the sugar dispenser, her eyes drifting away from the map to survey the diner's empty tables and booths. The morning light had crept into the far corner, illuminating a dusty vase filled with wilting cactus flowers, their petals like tiny fingers curled around the stem as if holding tight against the coming heat. As she wiped down the counter once more, her gaze wandered out to the parking lot where the lone truck waited, its tires worn smooth by miles of desert highway, the sun's warm glow casting a golden path across the asphalt like a slow-moving river. Her hands moved slowly to the coffee maker, the stainless steel carafe glinting in the morning light as she poured a fresh pot. The rich aroma wafted up, mingling with the scent of worn vinyl and stale air as she replaced the carafe with a soft clink. Her gaze drifted back to the map, tracing the route as it crept into the mountains, where the air grew cooler and the shadows deeper. Outside, the sun reached its peak in the sky, casting a warm glow over the diner's parking lot, where the lone truck waited, its tires worn smooth by miles of desert highway. The waitress's hands paused above the sugar dispenser, her eyes lingering on the map as she let out a slow breath, the morning light dancing across the countertop like tiny particles of dust suspended in air. As she poured steaming cream into a chipped mug, the scent of roasted coffee and worn leather wafted up from the diner's worn booths, mingling with the sweet aroma of yesterday's baked goods, now stale on the counter. Her eyes drifted to the glass case displaying a row of flaky pies, their golden crusts reflecting the morning light like tiny mirrors as she carried the mug back to the kitchen, her footsteps quiet on the linoleum floor, the sound of sizzling bacon and simmering soup filling the air with comforting warmth. While outside, the sun's rays danced across the parking lot, casting long shadows behind the few early risers, their cars parked like sentinels at attention. Her hands moved slowly to the sink, the water running cool and clear as she rinsed out the mug, the scent of cream and coffee lingering in the air. Outside, the sun's rays crept across the parking lot, casting a warm glow on the worn asphalt, where a few early risers stirred, their cars parked like sentinels at attention. While inside, the diner's clock ticked steadily, its gentle rhythm weaving through the quiet morning sounds of sizzling bacon and simmering soup. Her hands moved slowly to the sink, the water running cool and clear as she rinsed out the mug, the scent of cream and coffee lingering in the air. Outside, the sun's rays crept across the parking lot, casting a warm glow on the worn asphalt, where a few early risers stirred, their cars parked like sentinels at attention. The diner's door swung open with a soft creak, revealing the quiet morning street, the neon sign above the diner's entrance humming softly as it cast its bright artificial light across the deserted pavement. She slipped out into the morning air, her footsteps silent on the sidewalk as she walked towards the corner, where the town's single traffic light hung like a pendant from the sky, casting a gentle glow over the empty street. The sound of her boots scuffing against the curb filled the air as she stood at the edge of the road, her eyes drinking in the stillness, the only movement the slow drift of the morning fog across the pavement, like a veil lifted gently by an invisible hand. Her gaze lingered on the fog's wispy tendrils curling around the streetlights as she breathed in deeply, the damp air carrying the sweet scent of blooming creosote and mesquite trees. Slowly, she began to move down the sidewalk, her feet sinking into the gravel, the soft crunch of stones beneath her boots, a gentle accompaniment to the morning's peaceful rhythm. The traffic light's gentle glow cast an eerie warmth on the deserted street, as if it too were stirring from a long slumber, its red, yellow, and green lights pulsing softly like a heartbeat, measuring out the passing moments in time. Her eyes followed the traffic light's rhythm, her gaze drifting up to the horizon where the sky was slowly lightening, a soft apricot hue spreading like a warm blanket across the desert landscape. As she walked, the gravel beneath her feet gave way to the smooth pavement, and she felt the gentle momentum of her footsteps carry her forward, her breathing slow, and even as she inhaled the crisp morning air scented with mesquite and creosote, the fragrance mingling with the sweet smell of fresh-cut grass wafting from a nearby park. The sound of birds beginning to stir, their chirping growing louder as they emerged from their nests, blended with the hum of the traffic light, creating a symphony of morning sounds that accompanied her steady pace down the sidewalk. As she turned the corner, the diner's neon sign receded into the distance, leaving only the soft glow of the traffic light to guide her. The sound of birdsong grew louder, a chorus of trills and chirps that seemed to match the gentle rhythm of her footsteps on the pavement. She breathed in deeply, the scent of mesquite and creosote mingling with the earthy smell of damp soil as she approached the edge of town. The road curved ahead, stretching out like a serpentine path into the desert's heart, the morning light casting long shadows across its surface. As she walked along the curved road, the pavement gave way to a dusty shoulder, and she felt the crunch of gravel beneath her feet slow to a gentle scratching sound. The air was alive with the scent of creosote and mesquite, carried on the soft breeze that rustled the leaves of the desert shrubs lining the road. Her gaze drifted out across the desert landscape, where the morning light cast long shadows across the sand and rock formations, like dark brushstrokes on a canvas. The sound of birdsong continued to fill the air, a gentle background hum that accompanied her steady pace as she walked, her breathing slow and even, her feet moving in perfect sync with the rhythm of her heartbeat. As she walked, the road began to wind its way up a gentle slope, the desert landscape unfolding like a canvas stretching out before her. The morning light cast long shadows across the sand and rock formations, creating an intricate pattern of light and dark that seemed to shift and change with every step. The air was alive with the scent of creosote and mesquite, carried on the soft breeze that rustled the leaves of the desert shrubs lining the road. Her gaze drifted out across the landscape, her eyes tracing the curves of a distant rock formation, its contours softened by the morning light. The sound of birdsong continued to fill the air, a gentle background hum that accompanied her steady pace as she walked, her breathing slow and even, her feet moving in perfect sync with the rhythm of her heartbeat. As she crested the slope, the road leveled out, and the desert landscape unfolded before her like a tapestry of golden light and rust-red rock formations. The scent of creosote grew stronger, mingling with the sweet aroma of palo verde trees, their branches stretching out like nature's own sculpture garden. Her footsteps slowed to match the gentle rhythm of her breath as she gazed out across the expanse, her eyes tracing the curves of a distant wash, its sandy banks glowing like a golden ribbon in the morning light. The sound of birdsong grew fainter, replaced by the soft crunch of gravel beneath her feet and the distant hum of a lone fly, its wings beating in time with her own heartbeat as she walked steadily on, lost in the tranquility of this desert dawn. As she walked, the road narrowed, weaving between stands of creosote and mesquite trees that seemed to lean in, their branches tangling overhead like nature's own canopy. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth, carried on the gentle breeze that rustled the leaves and released tiny particles of dust into the morning light. Her footsteps slowed further, her gaze drifting down to the rough gravel beneath her feet, where a small, shimmering rock caught her attention. its facets glinting like tiny stars in the desert dawn. As she stood there, mesmerized by the tiny rock's subtle sparkle, her fingers reached out to gently lift it from the gravelly surface, and with a slow, deliberate movement, she turned it over in her palm, watching as the morning light danced across its facets, casting tiny shadows that seemed to shift and change like the desert landscape itself. The soft crunch of gravel beneath her feet was the only sound that broke the stillness as she breathed deeply, letting the quiet, peaceful atmosphere wash over her, her mind quietly content with the simple pleasure of this moment, lost in the tranquility of this desert dawn. As she turned the rock over, the morning light highlighted a delicate vein of quartz that ran through its center, its subtle sparkle weaving together with the gentle hum of the fly to create a soothing melody that seemed to synchronize her own breath and heartbeat. With a slow, deliberate movement, she reached out with her other hand and gently brushed away a small cluster of tiny pebbles that clung to the rock's surface, their soft rattle echoing through the stillness like a whispered secret. As the last pebble fell away, she let her gaze drift back up to the desert landscape, where the wash had transformed into a shimmering ribbon of light, its sandy banks glowing with an otherworldly intensity that seemed to draw her in, her eyes tracing the curves of the distant terrain as she breathed deeply, lost in the tranquility of this desert morning. The gentle movement of her fingers slowed and she let the rock rest in the palm of her hand, its quartz vein continuing to glimmer like a tiny star as the morning light danced across its surface. The soft crunch of gravel beneath her feet was the only sound that broke the stillness, a soothing accompaniment to her slow breathing as she stood there, lost in the quiet pleasure of this moment, her mind quietly content with the simple beauty of this desert dawn. As she breathed deeply, her gaze began to drift down to the rough gravel beneath her feet, where a small patch of creosote bush was starting to stir, its delicate yellow flowers unfolding like tiny lanterns in the morning light, their sweet fragrance wafting up on the gentle breeze that carried the scent of damp earth across the desert floor. Her eyes followed the gentle movement of the creosote bush's petals as they slowly unfurled, releasing a soft whisper of sweetness into the air, which mingled with the morning light to create a warm, comforting aroma that seemed to seep into her very pores, calming her further as she breathed deeply, her chest rising and falling in a slow, soothing rhythm that synchronized with the gentle stirring of the book. As she stood there, lost in this peaceful tableau, the rock still held firmly in her hand, its stool, quartz fine glinting softly like a tiny moon. She began to slowly turn her attention back to the desert landscape, where the wash had continued its subtle transformation into a shimmering ribbon of light that now seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, as if it too were awakening from its nocturnal slumber, its sandy banks glowing with an otherworldly intensity that drew her gaze. As she turned her attention back to the desert landscape, the shimmering ribbon of light in the wash seemed to grow more vibrant, its curves and bends weaving together like a gentle melody, drawing her gaze deeper into the terrain. Her eyes traced the path as it disappeared over a distant dune, where the morning sun cast long shadows that stretched across the sand like dark fingers, slowly unfolding their secrets beneath the gentle breeze. The soft rustle of the creosote bush's petals continued to fill the air with its sweet fragrance, mingling with the scent of damp earth and the distant aroma of mesquite trees burning in someone's cook fire, carried on them the morning wind that whispered secrets across the desert floor. Her breathing slowed further, synchronizing with the gentle stirring of the bush as she stood there, lost in the quiet beauty of this desert dawn, her mind contentedly immersed in the simple pleasures of this moment, where time itself seemed to slow and stretch out like a canvas of golden light. As she breathed in the scent of damp earth and creosote sweetness, the rock still held firmly in her hand. Her gaze continued to follow the shimmering ribbon of light in the wash as it wound its way over the dunes, casting long shadows that seemed to grow longer with each passing moment. The morning sun cast a warm glow across the sand, illuminating the tiny ridges and crevices where ants and beetles scurried about, their busy movements a gentle accompaniment to her own slow breathing as she stood there, her feet sinking slightly into the cool sand, her weight shifting subtly from one foot to the other in a slow, rhythmic motion that seemed to harmonize with the desert's awake. As she breathed in the scent of damp earth and creosote sweetness, the rock still held firmly in her hand. Her gaze continued to follow the shimmering ribbon of light in the wash as it wound its way over the dunes, casting long shadows that seemed to grow longer with each passing moment. The morning sun cast a warm glow across the sand, illuminating the tiny ridges and crevices where ants and beetles scurried about, their busy movements a gentle accompaniment to her own slow breathing. As she stood there, her feet sinking slightly into the cool sand, her weight shifting subtly from one foot to the other in a slow, rhythmic motion that seemed to harmonize with the desert's awakening. The warmth of the sun on her skin was like a gentle caress, infusing her with a sense of calm and tranquility as she continued to breathe deeply, her body swaying slightly with each slow exhalation. The rock in her hand felt heavy with the weight of her thoughts, yet it was anchored firmly, just as her own feet were rooted to the spot, seemingly unmovable amidst the shifting sands. As she breathed out slowly, her chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm, her gaze drifting lazily across the dunes to where the creosote bushes stood sentinel, their spindly branches etched against the sky like a delicate pen and ink drawing. The air was heavy with the scent of dew-kissed sand and the distant hint of mesquite, its sweetness mingling with the earthy aroma of damp soil as she inhaled deeply, her body swaying slightly with each slow exhalation, her feet sinking further into the cool sand as she shifted her weight imperceptibly from one foot to the other. As she breathed out slowly, her gaze continued to roam the desert's gentle contours, her eyes tracing the subtle curves and bends of the dunes, the creosote bushes standing like sentinels at their bases, their spindly branches etched against the sky in a delicate dance. The rock still held firmly in her hand, its weight anchoring her to the spot as she shifted her weight imperceptibly from one foot to the other, her feet sinking further into the cool sand, her slow breathing harmonizing with the desert's quiet awakening. As she breathed in slowly, her gaze settled on a small cluster of ocotillo plants standing like tiny soldiers at the base of a distant dune. Their spines were adorned with delicate white flowers that seemed to shimmer in the morning light, releasing a faint sweet fragrance into the air. The soft rustle of their leaves as they swayed gently in the breeze created a soothing melody that blended seamlessly with her own slow breathing. Her eyes followed the subtle curves of the dune's slope, tracing the path of a small wadi that had carved out a serpentine channel through the sand over countless years. The rock still felt heavy in her hand, its weight grounding her as she shifted her weight imperceptibly from one foot to the other, her feet sinking further into the cool sand as the desert's quiet awakening continued around her. As her gaze lingered on the ocotillo plants, their delicate white flowers seemed to grow more vibrant, releasing a fainter sweetness into the air that mingled with the scent of dew-kissed sand and distant mesquite. The soft rustle of their leaves harmonized with her slow breathing as she shifted her weight imperceptibly from one foot to the other, her feet sinking further into the cool sand. Her eyes drifted back to the creosote bushes, their spindly branches etched against the sky like a delicate pen and ink drawing, as she began to slowly rotate her hand around the rock's smooth surface, feeling its weight anchor her to the spot amidst the desert's quiet awakening. The gentle curve of the dune slope seemed to guide her gaze along the serpentine channel, carved out by the small wadi, tracing the path of ancient waters that had long since disappeared into the sands. As she turned her hand around the rock's surface, her fingers brushing against its smoothness, her gaze followed the curve of the dune, her eyes tracing the subtle ridges and troughs that told the story of ancient winds and patient erosion. The gentle rustle of a day. The ocotillo leaves and the soft hum of distant insects created a lullaby that harmonized with her slow breathing. As she shifted her weight imperceptibly from one foot to the other, her feet sinking further into the cool sand. As her hand continued its slow rotation around the rock surface, the creosote bush's spindly branches appeared to sway in harmony, their delicate limbs stretching and contracting like tiny fingers. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming Palo Verde trees, their bright yellow flowers a splash of color against the desert's muted palette. Her gaze drifted to the rocky outcropping on the horizon, its rugged terrain softened by the gentle morning light as she brought her hand to rest against the rock, feeling its solidity and calmness seep into her being. The soft rustle of the ocotillo leaves and the distant hum of insects blended together in a soothing melody that harmonized with her slow breathing, her eyes tracing the subtle curves of the dune slope. As she shifted her weight imperceptibly from one foot to the other, her feet sinking further into the cool sand. As she settled into the stillness, her gaze drifted back to the rocky outcropping on the horizon, its rugged terrain slowly revealed in the growing light, like a gentle awakening from a deep slumber. The creosote bush's spindly branches continued their slow dance, their delicate limbs stretching and contracting like tiny fingers. As she brought her hand to rest against the rock, feeling its solidity and calmness seep into her being, the air was filled with a sweet scent of blooming Palo Verde trees, their bright yellow flowers a splash of color against the desert's muted palette. As the morning light crept slowly across the dunes, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch out like gentle fingers, beckoning her deeper into the stillness. Her hand lingered on the rock, its rough texture a reminder of the desert's ancient silence. As she stood there, the creosote bush's branches seemed to slow their gentle swaying, as if echoing her own calmness. The morning light crept higher, casting a warm glow over the dunes, and the Palo Verde tree's bright yellow flowers appeared to vibrate softly, like tiny drums beating out a peaceful rhythm. Her eyes followed the rock's curve, tracing the subtle ridges and troughs that told the story of patient erosion, as her breathing slowed further, harmonizing with the desert's quiet pulse. As she continued to stand there, her feet sinking deeper into the cool sand, her gaze shifted to the gentle ripples on the surface of a nearby salt lake, its calm expanse reflecting the morning light like a mirror. And slowly, her attention turned to the tiny rills that snaked their way across the sandy floor, their sinuous paths etching intricate patterns in the stillness. The lake's surface continued its slow undulation, as if the morning light was gently caressing it, creating a series of tiny concentric ripples that expanded outward like a symphony of subtle movements. Her eyes followed the rill's paths, tracing their sinuous curves and intricate patterns as her hand slowly released its hold on the rock, allowing her fingers to drift downward, her palm opening like a small fan to catch the morning's gentle breeze. The creosote bush's branches began to stir once more, their slow dance resuming as if they were awakening from a collective slumber, while the Palo Verde tree's flowers vibrated softly, their rhythmic pulse harmonizing with the desert's quiet heartbeat. As her palm released its hold on the rock, her fingers trailed across the sand, leaving behind a faint path of disturbed grains that seemed to shimmer in the morning light. The creosote bush's branches continued their slow sway, their delicate tips brushing against each other like the whispers of old friends sharing secrets. The Palo Verde tree's flowers vibrated softly, their gentle thrumming underscoring the desert's quiet pulse, as her hand slowly flexed and released, its movements mirroring the waves on the salt lake's surface. Her hand continued to move in slow motion, tracing a path across the sand that mirrored the gentle ripples on the lake's surface. The creosote bush's branches swayed in tandem, their soft rustling blending with the Palo Verde trees' subtle vibrations, as her fingers left behind a trail of disturbed grains that seemed to glow softly in the morning light. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming ocotillo, its delicate red flowers unfurling like tiny fireworks exploding across the desert floor. Her breath slowed further, harmonizing with the desert's quiet pulse. As she allowed her body to settle into the gentle rhythm of the moment, her very being becoming one with the stillness of the early morning. As her hand slowly stilled, the creosote bush's branches continued their slow dance, their delicate tips weaving together like a tapestry of gentle whispers. The Palo Verde tree's flowers vibrated softly, their rhythmic pulse harmonizing with the desert's quiet heartbeat as the air grew heavier with the scent of damp earth and morning dew. Her breath slowed further, becoming one with the stillness of the early morning as she allowed her body to settle into the gentle rhythm of the moment. Her hand remained still. A small pool of light reflected off the grains of sand accumulated around her fingers, as if the desert's morning sun had created a tiny mirror, subtly rippling the air with its quiet presence. The creosote bush's branches continued their slow sway, their tips weaving together like the threads of an ancient tapestry, while the Palo Verde tree's flowers vibrated softly, their gentle thrumming underscoring the desert's quiet pulse. As she stood there, her body a slow-moving extension of the desert's stillness, the air began to fill with the sweet scent of mesquite blossoms, their delicate white flowers unfolding like tiny stars scattered across the morning landscape. The creosote bush's branches stilled, their tips entwined in a gentle embrace, as if sharing secrets whispered by the Palo Verde tree's softly vibrating flowers. Her breath slowed further, harmonizing with the desert's quiet pulse, as she allowed her very being to become one with the stillness of the early morning. Her body a part of the landscape, connected to the land and its rhythms. As the scent of mesquite blossoms infused the air, a gentle breeze rustled the spines of the chalacacti, their branches like nature's own sculptures, intricately carved with precision and patience. The sound of sand particles trickling down the sides of ancient rock formations mingled with the soft hum of a distant fly, its wings beating at a pace that was both soothing and hypnotic. Her body swayed ever so slightly, as if drawn into the slow dance of the desert's awakening. Her breath synchronized with a gentle lapping of the morning light against the dry earth. The ocotillo's red flowers glowed brighter now, their delicate petals unfolding like tiny trumpets, announcing the arrival of a new day, while the Palo Verde tree's flowers continued to vibrate softly, their rhythmic pulse harmonizing with the desert's quiet heartbeat, as the air rhythmic pulse harmonizing with the desert's quiet heart grew heavier with the scent of damp earth and morning dew. As she stood there, her breathing in harmony with the desert's pulse, a faint line of light appeared on the horizon, gradually growing into the shape of a distant mountain range. The rock's weathered surfaces glinted like scattered jewels, their rusty hues deepening as the morning sun cast its gentle rays upon them. The creosote bush's branches stirred once more, their tips weaving together in a soft, slow rhythm that seemed to mirror the gentle rise and fall of her chest. The air grew heavier with the scent of damp earth and morning dew, as if the desert itself was awakening from a long slumber. Her body swayed slightly, as if drawn into the slow dance of the mountain's ancient rocks, their rugged surfaces worn smooth by the relentless passage of time. As the mountain range's rusty hues deepened, a small cluster of birds took to the sky, their morning songs weaving together in a gentle tapestry that seemed to harmonize with her breathing. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and morning dew, and she felt her own pulse slow further, as if attuning herself to the desert's quiet rhythm. Her body moved in a slow, fluid motion, like the gentle lapping of the morning light against the dry earth, as she began to make her way along the deserted road. Her footsteps quiet on the rough asphalt. The Palo Verde tree's flowers continued to vibrate softly, their rhythmic pulse harmonizing with the desert's quiet heartbeat, while the ocotillo's red flowers glowed brighter still, their delicate petals unfolding like tiny trumpets announcing the arrival of a new day. As she walked, the desert's silence grew thicker, like a blanket of warm air that enveloped her. The creosote bush's branches continued to sway in rhythm with her footsteps, their tips weaving together in a soft, slow dance that seemed to draw her closer to the mountain range. The rock's rusty hues deepened further, as if the morning sun was slowly awakening their ancient secrets. Her breathing harmonized with the desert's pulse, and her body moved in a slow, fluid motion, like the gentle lapping of the morning light against the dry earth. The roadside town's sleepy main street unfolded before her, its adobe buildings worn smooth by time, their doors opening onto dusty alleys and quiet courtyards. The air was heavy with the scent of ripe citrus and fresh-cut grass, as if the morning dew had infused the very earth itself with a soft green glow. Her footsteps slowed to match the rhythm of the creosote bush's branches, which seemed to be weaving together into a slow, deliberate pattern that harmonized with her breathing. The Palo Verde tree's flowers vibrated softly, their delicate petals unfolding like tiny trumpets announcing the arrival of a new day. As she made her way down the street, her eyes drinking in the quiet beauty of the desert town's stillness, the morning light crept slowly across the adobe buildings, illuminating the dusty alleys and quiet courtyards, as if awakening the town from a deep slumber. Her footsteps paused before the oldest building on Main Street, its door adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to hold the secrets of the desert's ancient whispers. The creosote bush's branches continued their slow dance, weaving together into a pattern that mirrored her own breathing. As she stood there, lost in the stillness of the morning, the scent of ripe citrus and fresh-cut grass enveloping her like a soft blanket. Her eyes lingered on the carvings, tracing the intricate patterns that seemed to hold the whispers of the desert within their curves. The morning light crept higher up the adobe walls, casting shadows that danced in tandem with her breathing. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and the promise of a new day unfolding. Her body relaxed further, as if merging with the stillness of the town, her footsteps barely audible as she stood before the ancient door. The creosote bush's branches continued their slow dance, weaving together into a hypnotic rhythm that drew her closer to the secrets within. The carvings seemed to deepen their secrets with each passing moment, as if drawing her in like a gentle magnetism. Her eyes lingered on the intricate patterns, tracing the subtle curves and lines that etched out ancient stories on the door's surface. The morning light crept higher still, casting longer shadows across the dusty alleys and quiet courtyards, as if awakening the town's very essence from its slumber. The door's intricate carvings seemed to hold her gaze, their secrets slowly seeping into her awareness like the morning light spreading across the desert landscape. Her breathing slowed further, matching the sharp rhythm of the creosote bush's branches as she reached out a hand to touch the ancient wood. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and citrus, and the promise of a new day unfolding like a gentle blanket wrapped around her. As her fingers made contact with the door's surface, the carvings seemed to shift ever so slightly, releasing a whispered melody that harmonized with her breath. The creosote bush's branches continued their slow waltz, as if conducting an ancient rhythm that drew her deeper into the morning's stillness. Her hand lingered on the door, tracing the intricate patterns that now pulsed with a subtle energy, like the quiet hum of a desert insect on a summer's day. The air thickened with the scent of damp earth and citrus, as if the very essence of the town was awakening, its secrets unfolding like a gentle flower blooming in the morning light. Now, as the story gently fades away, let the words rest, let the sounds remain. Allow the gentle, calming sounds to carry you, slowly and naturally, into deep, peaceful sleep.